Hi, welcome to this week's episode of Straight Talk with Yuripzy Morgan. So, this week, parts of it kind of felt like a scene from Mean Girls as opposed to the US government. Listen to this explanation from CNN.
The man who was handed nearly unfettered access to the federal government is openly musing about forming his own political party. And the same guy, the billionaire backing the U.S. space program, he's now threatening to take his rockets and go home. What at this time yesterday was a one-sided attack on the president's signature spending bill is no longer just a policy disagreement, not even close. It has now become quite personal, as the president says he thinks he knows why.
It has become quite personal. Donald Trump and Elon Musk broke up, and has anybody checked on JD Vance? Where is he? So, what is this about? We all know, if you've been keeping up with any kind of politics, when Donald Trump came into office, he had been BFFs with Elon Musk throughout the campaign. And it was kind of an interesting relationship because they're both billionaires, although uh, well, not Donald Trump, but Elon Musk has way more zeros behind his name. But they're still both very rich guys, right? Donald Trump is a rich guy. And he joined the campaign and became kind of this cheerleader, this spokesperson about for cutting cost. And a lot of it, had to do a lot of his credentials, obviously, not just being Elon Musk and Tesla and SpaceX and those sorts of things, but what he was able to do at X, at Twitter. Remember when he bought Twitter and he came in and he like cleaned house, and that became somewhat of a jumping point, or some some evidence for the Trump administration to say, hey, this guy who has made all of this money, who's created these great inventions, and who is able to dramatically cut costs at Twitter, turn it into X, and rebrand it, we're going to do something similar with the federal government. Because we have had such a massive deficit in our country for so long, we have had an unbalanced budget, and we have a trillions of dollars worth of debt to deal with. And so it became kind of like, hey, look, we got this guy, this expert, this consultant over here who's going to help us rework the federal budget. Sounds great. Well, they got into office, and the first, I don't know, like 90 days have been kind of weird because there is obviously the Elon Musk and what he was able to do in the private sector, but government works very, very differently. We all know that. We should know that. And I do think that there was a lot of frustration from Elon Musk with the way that the government runs, right? With the boundaries that you have to accept. And this is true of Donald Trump too. I think that when he came into office in 2016, he thought that this was going to be like the private sector where you can just fire people. You can't just fire people in the government. Now, that's not to say that you shouldn't be able to. Oh, I absolutely believe you should be able to, but that's not how government works. You've got to go through all these agencies, and then there's Congress, and there's rules. Oh, there's the Constitution. So you can't just do whatever you would do in the private sector. Donald Trump found that out, and I think he's still finding it out. And Elon Musk ran up against that as well. So all of this, I think, what really drove the wedge between these two, what really, cut the cord here, was the big, beautiful bill. So if you remember just a couple of, I guess, I feel like it's been a million years, but I guess it's only been a couple of weeks. The Trump administration has been pushing this budget, the big, beautiful bill. And the writing was on the wall when the Nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office, which is kind of like the CFO of government, that just like they're just here to tell you how much things are going to cost. That bill looks great, whatever, here's how much it's going to cost. They came out and said that this big, beautiful bill would actually increase the deficit by $2.4 trillion over 10 years. And I think Elon Musk, who came into this whole, like, he came into this relationship saying, I thought we were going to cut costs. Like, you brought me in here. We created Doge. We were firing people left and right. We were slashing budgets. We were cutting costs. And you come out with this bill that's going to increase the deficit by $2.4 trillion? Like, you lied to me. And then they kind of broke up. So, here's what happened. Here's like a little bit of the timeline of what happened. So Elon gets on X. Yeah, it's not Twitter anymore. He gets on X and he says, like, he must have I just picture him stewing, like he's like walking around in his bedroom and he's, probably texting and just maybe he's like writing the text and then deleting it and writing the text and then deleting it again. And he finally just has it because his first tweet said this: I'm sorry. I just can't stand it anymore. This massive, outrageous, pork-filled congressional spending bill is a disgusting abomination. Shame on those who voted for it. You know you did wrong. You know it. Like, he just was like, that's it. Like, he had let it stew and he was done. He's going to call out the Trump administration for this bill. And you know what? I don't think that he's necessarily wrong about that. Now, I have been saying this, regardless of how you feel about Donald Trump. I'm not here to say, whether you like him or dislike him, but the man does not adhere to Republican principles. Like, he is run as a Republican, but he doesn't act like a Republican. And he came in saying, we're going to slash the budget, right? We're going to get things under control. We're going to, reduce the debt. We're going to reduce the deficit. And that's not what he's doing. He's increasing it. And Elon is right on this point. And I think he just finally was like, I'm done. Now, some of this I think may also be some of Elon's personality. He has been very clear. He's been very open that he is on the spectrum. And I think it seems like he's having difficulty with some of the nuances of Donald Trump, which are, I'm going to say something and do something else. Whereas at this point, I think most of us have kind of gotten used to the fact that he says really wild things and tends to do somewhat wild things, but oftentimes he does the complete opposite of what he says he's going to do. And I think Elon went into this relationship thinking, you said we were going to do X, Y, and Z, and now we're not doing it, and I have had enough. So he followed that tweet up with this. It more than defeats all the cost savings achieved by the Doge team at great personal cost and risk. So if I'm Elon, I would be pretty upset about this too, because you bring him in and you give him this authority. And Elon went from being, like just the guy with the rockets and Tesla and, quirky, but I don't think people really liked or disliked him one way or the other. And then he came onto the campaign and all of a sudden you had all these like liberal, environmentalists who are driving around Teslas, defacing their own cars. I mean, the number of stickers that I've seen on Teslas that people say, oh, I bought this before Elon became whatever, and I'm like, it's still your car, but whatever. So he went from being like this kind of neutral guy, quirky guy, to all of a sudden being hated, outright hated by a significant portion of the population. And he's like, and not only that, but when he actually started doing the Doge cuts, it's not like he went in and was like, hey, I think we're going to, get rid of this position at some point. You should start, bumping up your resume. No, he walked in and was like, we're firing all these people. And he became super unpopular. There was a lot of personal cost to him. And then he said this. He was on a Twitter storm. He just kept going. He was not letting it loose. So then he said, I cannot believe the Republicans are extending the debt ceiling. Oh, wait, no, let me back up. So he then brought up a tweet that Donald Trump said back in 2013. So like he was digging in the archives. He was so mad that he was like, not only did you make a fool out of me, not only did you lie to me, but you made a fool out of me. And let me remind you of who you said you were. So he brings up this tweet from January 23rd of 2013 where Donald Trump said, I cannot believe the Republicans are extending the debt ceiling. I am a Republican and I am embarrassed. And so he's like throwing it in his face. Like, remember back when you used to say that this was a shame and that this was shameful, and now you are doing the exact same thing. And you know what I find really interesting is that I think that there are a lot more Republicans who feel exactly the same way that Elon Musk does, but they just don't say it. They don't say it either because they are so enamored with Donald Trump. And listen, like I hear you, the guy has said things that have been on the minds of Americans for years. And he has fought against, ideas and principles that I think a lot of Americans disagree with. So I get that. But it is also true to say that a lot of the things that Donald Trump does are anti-Republican. Things like red flag laws. The budget is a big thing. Due process. All of those things are things that Republicans have said, this is our platform. This is what we're going to build our name on. And he just does the complete opposite. And Elon, I don't think Elon is a Republican. I think he's just here to kind of be a mirror. And he's just saying, look, you said that this was you. It is clearly not you. And you've kind of drug my name with you. And now I'm upset, so I'm gonna call you out. But like I said, I think that there's probably a lot more Republicans who agree with Elon, but they just won't say it. And they won't say it because of politics. They won't say it either because, like I said, it's either just they're personally enamored with Donald Trump, or it's because of politics. Because even at the local level, you have a significant amount of Trump supporters, the MAGA supporters, and they are not going to let it go if you are a Republican who disagrees with Donald Trump. Even if Donald Trump contradicts himself like he's doing here. I'm going to cut the budget. I'm actually going to add $2.4 trillion. But anyways, although there are a number of Republicans that have said this bill is not big and beautiful. It is big and awful. So, for example, Senator Rand Paul said he would vote no on this bill because it includes language to raise the debt ceiling by $4 trillion. Or Senator Ron Johnson, he's a Republican from Wisconsin, who said he's a hard no on the House passed bill because it doesn't do enough to roll back spending. Even Senator Lindsey Graham, Republican from South Carolina, said that I think bill needs to be more fiscally responsible, which is, come on. I mean, what do you expect from Senator Graham? But at least he didn't give it a yes, this thing is great. No, it's actually really awful. At least he said that publicly. But Donald Trump is now saying that maybe this has less to do with the budget and more to do with Elon Musk's personal loss. Listen to this clip.
Elon's upset because we took the EV mandate, and which was a lot of money for electric vehicles, and they're having a hard time, the electric vehicles, and they want us to pay billions of dollars in subsidy. And Elon knew this from the beginning.
I feel like I'm in middle school again. Well, what she's really upset about is no. Back up. Just to be clear here, he's talking about the EV mandates that were taken, or the EV benefits that were taken out of the bill, so you wouldn't get those credits and whatever. So he's like, oh, Elon's just mad because he's not going to sell as many Teslas. Let me tell you how rich Elon Musk is. I had to look this up for myself because I was like, I don't know, maybe that is a legitimate argument. Well, he does about $98 billion of his wealth comes from Tesla, right? So that's a lot. $98 billion of his wealth comes from Tesla. Where the majority of his wealth comes? He gets $147 billion from SpaceX. So Tesla, as big as it is, as profitable it is, as wealthy as it has made him, is kind of his side hustle compared to SpaceX. So I don't think that the tax credits that he's talking about there, he's not losing any sleep over it. Just to show you like how incredibly wealthy this man is. It's mind-boggling that I don't think he could lose Tesla tomorrow completely, and he would still have $147 billion plus what he has in his other ventures. I think the two to combined make up about 80% of his wealth. So the guy is like, I don't think he's worried about Tesla. For the rest of us, though, I will say this. There's an old African proverb that when elephants fight, the grass gets stomped. We are the grass. You and me. We are the ones that are going to get stomped here because ultimately there does need to be a lot less spending in this bill, and that's not being accomplished. This whole talk about Teslas or EV mandates or SpaceX or all the things that are going on, these are things that we as people benefit from. We benefit from a robust government. Not robust government. Let me back up. We benefit from a robust economy. And things like the tariffs and the fighting and a bloated government, overspending, make things worse for you and me. We also kind of need SpaceX. The benefits that it has provided for humankind, please don't take your ball and go home. All of us were playing here too. So I don't know who's more, I feel like I'm with JD Vance on this one. Like, could you guys please stop fighting? But at least it does. I do respect Elon in the sense that, look, this is not a big, beautiful bill, whatever you want to call it. And I'm glad he's at least bringing attention to the fact that there's a lot of pork, a lot of spending in this bill, and it is not what's best for America. Thanks for listening to Straight Talk with Yuripzy Morgan. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel and add this podcast on Spotify. If you're enjoying the show, consider subscribing to my Patreon to help keep the lights on around here. Just $5 goes a long way. Go to patreon.com/whymorganshow today. And don't forget to tell a friend. So it looks like the case of Abrego Garcia, the El Salvador native who was deported to El Salvador on a clerical error by the Trump administration, is back in the news, and he is headed back to the U.S. As a matter of fact, I think he's already here in the U.S., but now he is here to face other charges. Listen to this from U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi.
Our government presented El Salvador with an arrest warrant, and they agreed to return him to our country. We're grateful to President Bukele for agreeing to return him to our country to face these very serious charges. This is what American justice looks like.
Ironic statement. So again, that was Pam Bondi, U.S. Attorney General, and apparently the guy can come back. Remember, for a while, just to kind of brief you on the saga that has been Abrego Garcia. This was a man who he lived in Maryland with his wife and kids, and he was picked up and then put on a plane and deported to El Salvador. Admittedly, by the Trump administration, it was a clerical error, but then they dug their heels in and said, well, but he's here illegally, and then next thing you know, we're getting court documents. They said they sent him to this notorious prison in El Salvador. El Salvador was like, we're not sending him back. He's a native of El Salvador, and this is where he belongs. There were accusations that he is MS-13. We got court documents from a bond hearing. Again, it was not an adjudication, so not an actual trial, but a bond hearing saying that he was suspected of being MS-13, and then all of these documents about past physical abuse to his wife. And the whole time, then the Supreme Court gets involved, and they say that the Trump administration has to facilitate his return. And basically, Trump was like, no, and you can't make me. And next thing you know, I guess apparently he is coming back. But he is coming back to face charges. Now, here's what I find really interesting about Pam Bondi says there, that this is American justice. And I don't disagree with that. I'll explain in just a second what the grand jury actually did. But I don't disagree with her in the sense that this is American justice. And this is not what is happening in other immigration cases. So what she's saying is this guy is now going to come back to the U.S. to face charges for human trafficking. Listen to the explanation about the grand jury.
The grand jury found that over the past 9 years, Abrego Garcia has played a significant role in an alien smuggling ring. They found this was his full-time job, not a contractor.
All right, I want to pause there for just a second because I want to explain what a grand jury actually is and what they found. Again, this is not they did not there's no trial. He hasn't been adjudicated or anything like that. He wasn't found guilty. A grand jury is different than a regular jury. It's larger. I think it's 18 to 24 people, I believe. And they get all of the evidence. In a grand jury, there is no defense. The defendant is not present. There is no defense attorney. It's just the government's attorney, these 18 to 24 people. It's all private. There's a lot of hearsay that goes on. And the entire purpose is to figure out if there's enough probable cause to charge someone. It's a very one-sided, it is very easy to indict somebody because, as I said, it is one-sided. There is no defense. You don't get a defense attorney. There are witnesses, but even they don't get an attorney. It's just the government's attorney presenting their side to this group of people saying, do you think we have enough to charge the person? Usually they say yes. They charge the person, and then there is a trial. Then there is, discovery. Then there's the whole shebang happens after that, and we decide guilt or innocence. But right now, none of that has been decided. So I just wanted to clear that up because now he has been charged with conspiracy to unlawfully transport illegal aliens for financial gain and unlawful transport of illegal aliens for financial gain. So basically a human trafficking ring. And there was video in the past, right? While this saga was playing out, there was video of a traffic stop, and I believe it was in Tennessee, where one of the police officers said they suspected that there was human trafficking. So anyways, he gets brought back now to the U.S. to stand trial for these two charges. And as you heard U.S. Attorney General there, Pam Bondi, say, this is American justice. And like I said, I don't disagree with her on that point. I would like this to happen in all of the cases because here's what's going on right now in these immigration courts. Now, just to be clear, I agree that if somebody has been charged with a violent crime, they do not need to be in this country. If they are here illegally, they should be deported if they are convicted of a violent crime. I do a lot of defense work, as an attorney, and I sometimes I get asked the question from friends, like how do you do defense work? Like, how do you defend some of these criminals? Um, Listen, that goes back to the roots of our Constitution, is that everyone deserves the opportunity to have a fair trial. Everyone, and especially people who are accused. Because have you ever been in a situation where somebody accused you of something that you didn't do? And it can be anything from, a rumor to something serious, a charge, a criminal charge or something like that. But you always have the right to defend yourself and say, no, I did not do that. As a defense attorney, I think that it helps the Constitution to keep both sides honest, including the police department, including our prosecutors, and including the government especially. They have to be kept honest too, because guess what? There have been too many instances where the government decides, I'm going to accuse you of something, and that is that. You should not be locked up and thrown away the key just because you were accused of something. What is going on in our immigration courts right now, or just in general, you have people who are here undocumented. And according to our immigration law, there are certain convictions, there are certain crimes that can get you thrown out because things like violent crimes, I believe DUIs are one of them as well. But certain violent crimes can get you thrown out of the country. All right, fine. What is happening right now, though, is that too many people have been accused or charged of something. They might have been charged with an assault. They might have been charged with, a DUI, things like that. And then what would ordinarily happen is that person would then go to court. They would have a trial, and evidence would be presented, and either a judge or a jury would decide, yes, this person is guilty, or no, this person is innocent. And then it would proceed that way. What's going on right now is that people are getting charged, and instead of having the opportunity to defend themselves, that charge in and of itself can now render them deportable. And so people are getting detained. I've actually had this happen to a couple of my clients. They get charged with something. They're going through, okay, we've got this court process. Here's your court date. Here are the different dates that you're going to come to court, and there are different parts of the trial. And rather than letting it play out, they get detained by ICE. They get detained by ICE. They're in a detention center now where they are no longer able to go back to the state court and continue their trial, and instead just getting deported based on an accusation, not a conviction. And I have a serious issue with that because that's not how our legal system works. What Pam Bondi is ironically saying here is that Abrego Garcia has now been charged with these two very serious federal crimes. He has been indicted and now he's been charged, and he's going to come back to America and he's going to stand trial. But that also means that he's going to have what a lot of these other folks don't get, which is the opportunity to defend himself. Now, it may very well be that he ends up being found guilty, and that's fine. If that's where the evidence points, then he's found guilty. He does his time. That's how justice works. That's how the American legal system works. It is not what is going on right now. So I find it super interesting that she kind of ironically is advocating for what a lot of immigration attorneys are saying now, is that folks are not getting due process. They are not getting the opportunity to defend themselves. And listen, I know that there is a lot of information, or a lot of people are there's a lot of disagreement about how much due process a person who is in this country undocumented can have. And there is case law about how much due process these individuals have, particularly the longer that they have been in the country. But as Americans, I think this is one of the cornerstones of our legal system. We believe, right, that if a person has been accused of something, that they have the right to defend themselves. Now we're getting into the, yes, but they're here undocumented, so they're not supposed to be here. That's true, but that is a civil violation. When it comes to the criminal cases, I do believe that they should have the opportunity to defend themselves. And if they are convicted, then the immigration courts take over. If you are convicted of an assault or some violent crime, then and you're not here legally, then yes, you should be deported. Like, you had your opportunity. You chose to do something bad in our country, and therefore you should face the consequences. But unfortunately, that's not happening in our systems. And you have people who would otherwise probably qualify for some sort of legal status in this country based on our current immigration laws, and they're not able to do so because they can't defend themselves. So I'm pretty sure that's not what she meant to do. I don't think she meant to side with a lot of immigration attorneys right now, but guess what? In her words, that's the American justice system. Okay. Thanks for listening to Straight Talk with Yuripzy Morgan. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel and add this podcast on Spotify. If you're enjoying the show, consider subscribing to my Patreon to help keep the lights on around here. Just $5 goes a long way. Go to patreon.com/whymorganshow today, and don't forget to tell a friend. All right, so for this next segment, I wanted to bring on my good friend Torrey Snow, who hosts a radio show here in Baltimore every day, Monday through Friday, 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. It's very obvious whose team you are on in the Trump and Elon debate. But I don't want to talk to you about that. I want to talk to you about something else. So Simone Biles and Riley Gaines, you brought this to my attention. They have gotten into a Twitter feud, which is apparently how we argue nowadays. And I was surprised. I was really shocked about this. Just as a little bit of background, my oldest daughter does competitive gymnastics, and so we are in the world of competitive gymnastics, and Simone Biles is obviously the queen of competitive gymnastics. And so but most of what I have known about her has been just her competition. She hasn't really gotten into a lot of the politics until recently. So Riley Gaines, as we all know, was the team captain of the University of Kentucky women's swim team. And then she became famous, or I guess a lot of people got to know her after a particular race where she came in tied for fifth place with another swimmer by the name of Leah Thomas. Leah Thomas had competed as a male at the University of Pennsylvania, and then switched to Kentucky, is transgender, started going by the name of Leah Thomas, and that created a lot of controversy, especially when Riley Gaines started talking about the fact that the women's team, they were not really notified about this, and then they were put in the same locker room. So it sounds like that's where a lot of the concern came about, because women's locker room, you're talking about a sport where they're wearing these swimsuits, they're very, very tight. She's talked about how it takes 15 minutes to put this thing on. They are helping each other a lot, and I can tell you, even with gymnastics, the Leos are super, super skin tight. Like, some of the moves that they do, you got to make sure that things don't move, right? And so they have to be very, very tight. And I can tell you, even in just that sport, it takes us a while to get my child into this uniform, right? And so she talked about being in that locker room with someone who is still a biological male. So Leah Thomas never, fully biological male, never got rid of anything in this locker room. So there was a lot of controversy. So then, anyways, fast forward, Riley Gaines becomes very famous as an outspoken advocate for women in women's sports.
The face of men in women's sports.
Yes, exactly. So there was apparently the Minnesota softball team won the state championship, and she posted something on Twitter where it was a picture of the state championship team. It said, "Comments off, LOL, to be expected when your star player is a boy." So in comes Simone Biles, and let me tell you what she said. She said, "At Riley Gaines, you're truly sick. All of this campaigning because you lost a race. Straight up sore loser. You should be uplifting the trans community and perhaps finding a way to make sports inclusive, or creating a new avenue where trans feel safe in sports. Maybe a transgender category in all sports. But instead, you bully them. One thing is for sure, no one in sports is safe with you around." And I gotta tell you, Torrey,
A lot of hyperbole.
it was a lot of hyperbole. I didn't need to know this side of Simone. I would have felt a lot better without this. But when you and I were talking about this before the show, I'd mentioned that I had to take a step back, because when I read that statement, I got really frustrated with Simone Biles for a number of things. And I think this kind of tends to happen to us sometimes when we see something like this, that there are there are a lot of different things to be angry about, and it makes reason kind of go out the window, right?
Yep. I always tell my kids, when you're angry, you're vulnerable. And it's not because, it's human, right? It's a human thing to be angry. It's a human thing to be frustrated, but your logical capacities just go out the window. And I found this particular exchange interesting, because I feel like again, Simone Biles is very intelligent. She's very sharp, very logical. I'm imagining, right? You can't perform in that arena to that degree without being very thoughtful. And I think same thing for Riley Gaines. And I've heard her speak. She puts her thoughts together, but it wasn't lost on me that both of these are individuals that are making assumptions about the other's motives, which is creating this huge disconnect in how they're having this conversation.
Yeah, and that I think is that's what I want to talk about, because when it comes to the issue of transgender folks in sports and women's, and when we're talking about women's sports, because I have not, have you seen this in men's sport? Like I don't
No.
think anybody's, that's not the issue.
Right.
It's transgender females who are biological males in female sports, and so it's very clear that Simone is attributing a certain motive to Riley Gaines. Oh, you are just anti-trans.
Right.
And that has been a common theme amongst people who are advocating for biological females in female sports.
Notice how she went to bullying. Like,
Yeah.
no one's safe around you. Like, Riley Gaines isn't going to hurt anyone.
Like,
Yeah.
and the fact that it goes back to, oh, that race, like you lost a race, you are a sore loser, and I can tell you, like, I did not swim in that race, that is not my fault. I'm like, I didn't come in fifth, but I still, when I read that, I immediately wanted to be like, hang on just 1 second.
Right.
This was a woman who is a captain of her, like, okay, not everybody is going to be Simone Biles,
Right.
but that does not take away her accomplishments, nor do I think this has to do with that particular race. That race was the catalyst that pushed her into the national spotlight, but this is bigger than that race. And for me, like, Simone harping on that feels very it feels like she's the one that's picking on her.
Well, and to be honest, she's not political. I've never known her to be political about anything. And there were some
Simone?
times, yeah, Simone Biles,
Yeah.
like this came out of nowhere. That's what was surprising to me. It's
Yeah.
like there are some people, that they'll kind of jump in and they'll get involved.
If
When I
J.K.
saw
Rowling did that,
exactly, like we
okay.
expect that,
Yeah.
but then she comes out of nowhere, and it's like Riley Gaines is catching strays from Simone Biles of all people,
Yeah.
and that she was so strong in her language, like you're bullying, and you should be uplifting, and you should be doing all of these things, and like no one's safe around you. And I'm just asking, where did this come from? Like, Simone, like, okay, maybe you have opinions on this. And quite frankly, even Simone Biles, like, even in her remarks, she's like, well, maybe there should be like a special league for transgender. Everything that she was saying was quite logical, but why the attack on Riley Gaines? I don't understand why that suddenly came out of nowhere.
Well, yeah, that's true. And one of the responses that Riley gave was like, it's not my job to create a specific lane for like that should be the NCAA
Right.
or whatever other sports league is out there to create that. Riley, and I'm saying their first names like I know them. But Riley has been advocating specifically for I think the safe treatment, and she talked a lot about the locker room, but for Simone to go after this, and here's the thing about swimming and gymnastics, I feel like Simone should know better
Right.
than this because, okay, in swimming, and I say this apparently because we consulted with a friend who was a collegiate swimmer. It's not my area. But apparently, men's and women's swimming is very, very similar. The times are different, but the events are the same. Whereas in gymnastics, it is completely different. And I think you and I have had conversations because my daughter, who is 10 years old but has competed at level 7, they are doing some really difficult things. And they are doing, and I've even said, I'm like, man, if something happens, I could just only imagine if she's in the gym working 15 hours a week. And I know that's crazy for a 10-year-old. I think it's crazy. But here I am. And in comes somebody who biologically has a significant advantage on strength because so much of what they are working on is to build muscles
Yep.
that women don't ordinarily excel at. Things like, I mean,
Well, case in point, and like I've been going to the gym. I've been telling you recently, and I made the observation: I almost never see women on the bench. Right, women
Yeah.
don't do upper body, right?
Yeah.
But I love the bench. It's my favorite exercise, right? Dumbbell curls, things like that. There's a huge development. You were kind of mentioning specifically, like one of my favorite videos from the Olympics is they had the male gymnast try to do the things that the women gymnasts typically do, and
Uh-huh.
it was hilarious. It was awful. I think there's a video of Simone Biles trying to do like a floor routine, like
Yeah.
some sort of like where you put your feet down and spin around
Uh-huh.
everything. She couldn't do it, but then the male was able to do it perfectly.
Yeah.
I don't like. But that's again, this doesn't add up. She of all people should know the distinctions. She should of all people should be aware of why these spaces need to be protected.
Yeah.
Very surprising to me, Yuripzy.
Yeah, I mean, so it's to go specifically about gymnastics. Like I said, swimming, men and women do the same events, but
Hmm.
different times. In gymnastics, they don't even do the same events. Women don't do the pommel horse and we don't do
Hmm.
the rings because those are events that require extreme upper body.
Right.
You know, I mean, and for some, like, why, I shouldn't have to explain this to you. Like, why do I have to tell you this?
Wasn't that why she's so good? Because her upper body is like like abnormally strong for her group.
I don't know if that's the specific, but she is extremely like one of the things that has made her so successful is that she has an immense amount of power.
Right.
So she goes super, super high. When she does the vault, part of why the reason she's able to do some of these really cool, crazy things is she goes so high. And that takes a lot of strength to do that. Same on the floor routine. But you get a typical guy, gymnast, who I don't know, give him some time to train. And I bet, I mean, they would go higher, faster, stronger because of the biological makeup.
Yeah.
And so it's very shocking to me. And like, what are you doing here?
Well, do you think that like maybe like was she pushed up to this? Like, do you think she's under pressure to
I
like
don't
be
know.
a counter? Because that was one thing. Right, Riley Gaines is gaining a lot of momentum, and the left really hasn't had a good answer for her. Because she's so popular, right? A lot of people have a lot of respect. But when Simone Biles jumps in, like that becomes a conversation, right? Like people are like, "Oh, wow, Simone Biles is on this." So again, knowing that, I'm sure that Simone Biles has like political opinions, but she's always been hesitant to do so. I'm wondering if she's under pressure to be like, hey, you need to use your platform to advocate more for underserved communities.
That may be the reason why. I'd love to know more about that, but I don't know. I think I was disappointed. I am disappointed,
Yeah.
that, and you don't
I
have to
have
like Riley
respect for
Gaines.
both of them, right? Like I
Yeah.
really do. I mean, Simone Biles is amazing. That's why, like I sent it to you because I'm like, why would she say this? And it's out of nowhere, right?
Yeah.
It's not her,
And she made it
team.
very personal.
Yes,
Oh, you
immediately.
lost a race. Which is like, no. So she came in fifth,
Yeah,
tied with Leah Thompson or Thomas,
Thomas. Yeah,
Leah Thomas. It's much bigger than that. And I don't know. I think on a human level, it just feels kind of icky.
yeah.
Like you're gonna bring that up, like the race, like, oh, this is just because she lost. If you don't know that it's bigger than that, then maybe you're the one that's being petty. That to me feels very, very disappointing.
Yeah, I agree.
So, all right, we're gonna keep an eye on this. With the platform that Simone Biles has, I don't think that this is gonna go away. So hopefully, other people are listening, and maybe the NCAA or other sports organizations. I do think that there has to be a solution to this.
Yeah. Maybe the two of them need to have a conversation. Like,
Off
do you think
Twitter,
they've ever, yeah, do you think, I wonder if they've ever had a conversation about it? Like, because that,
I don't know.
again, that's the kind of thing that I think that Simone Biles is smart. If she sat down and talked, like, they would be able to communicate on a level that we can't. Like, if I have a conversation, like, even you, I mean, as a mother of an athlete, you can probably have conversations that, I couldn't have, or my daughter, right? They play
Yeah.
together. There's some things that can't relate. I would think that two athletes, competing in women's sports, and especially Simone Biles with her background, they should be able to sit down and have a conversation. And like Simone Biles should be able to say, "Oh, I kind of see where you're coming from
Yeah.
here, and it makes sense to me, and I'm not even an athlete." So
Yeah, but I agree with you. Would hope that they would be able to do that. But before we end on this topic, I just want to circle back to something that you had said before, in regards to the attributing a motive to people, because
yeah,
we do this. I think people do this a lot in the political sphere, where
yes,
Simone Biles or Riley Gaines is saying, I am doing this to protect women in women's sports. And it sounds like Simone is saying, no, you are doing this because you are anti-trans or you are bullying trans people. And we do this like as human beings a lot of times.
yes, we do.
I know what you're saying, but I don't believe what you're saying. I think you're doing X, Y, and Z.
Yeah,
You can see this even with a lot of people who voted for Donald Trump. And like the people who there, I have seen this happen, especially on The View. They're terrible about this, where they'll say, they attribute person's motive for voting for Donald Trump because they are racist, sexist, xenophobic, whatever. Like they
We're having a conversation about how to reach out to men, and Joy Behar's like, well, they just need to stop being sexist. It's like, you are really missing the point here.
Yes.
So it's
Yes.
nothing to do with being sexist.
But
Like,
we do this all the time,
yes.
like, oh, if you voted for Trump, then you must be this. Oh,
Yeah.
if you voted for Kamala Harris, then you must hate America or whatever, and it's like that's an example of attributing a motive to somebody
Yep.
that does not exist. Like maybe, just maybe, somebody voted for Donald Trump because they did not want to continue the Biden administration's, like we're going to give away student loans, we're going to, the whole thing, the pullout of Afghanistan and all these sorts of things. Maybe someone just simply disagreed with those things. And when Kamala Harris said, oh, I wouldn't change anything, she's going to keep doing the same stuff. Maybe they were like, I'm just not going to go that route.
Well, let me ask you this, right? If more people took people at face value, like if I said, I have a problem with you because your cilantro is bitter, like
It really is a game of the other day.
like, do you think that like our politics would be better overall if more people would just be willing? Like we know politics is people are manipulating, but I feel like we go so far overboard that when someone gets up and says, "This is why I oppose this," I think we should just listen to them and maybe just assume that they're telling us what's going on.
Yeah, listen, yeah. Look, I will. I mean, I do get the, maybe being a little bit suspicious or a little bit questioning of people, but yeah, attributing a motive to somebody else, or just saying like I'm just not going to believe what you're saying. I'm going to assume that you are transphobic or that you are racist or that you are sexist. Like that is why I think in American politics right now we just can't get anything done.
Well, without evidence too. Like for
Right.
example, Wes Moore. People might be like, "But Wes Moore, I'm not running for president." Well, you're obviously running for president.
Obviously.
That's an example where we can be like, okay, you're saying one thing, but your actions, we have plenty of information, data
Yes.
that tells us why we don't believe what you're actually telling us versus Riley Gaines. We have no evidence to suggest that she has any other motive. And I mean, I'm sure you would be
Yeah.
creeped out if you're in a locker room and some dude starts undressing. Like most of us can relate to that. And we're like, yeah, I think she kind of has a point. Why would you immediately jump to being a bully?
Yeah, and unfortunately, that has been the response from a lot of folks on the left. And I don't know if Simone Biles is a Democrat, but I'm just saying generally the response from a lot of folks on the left
Yeah.
to disagreement has been, you are sexist, you are racist,
Yep.
you are xenophobic, you are transphobic, or whatever it is. And I think a significant amount of people, as seen by the last election, got tired of having someone attribute a particular motive to
And
them.
that makes you really unlikable. It makes it really hard for you to relate to people, and
Yeah.
they're not gonna be supportive of you if you're gonna be like, oh well, the reason you're like, no, I'm telling you, I'm tired of being broke. I'm tired of paying, I don't know
Yeah.
how much a dozen eggs is, right? But just
Yeah.
things like that, like just listen. Like you don't have to judge motives into that. Just accept what people are telling you.
Yeah, and same thing with Riley Gaines. I mean, I think she had a very compelling story with what happened in the locker room.
Yes.
And I don't believe it was just one time. I think this happened over the season. That is not transphobia. That is a legitimate concern by a female athlete in a locker room where you have to undress completely
Yeah.
and be undressed for some time. That is a legitimate concern. Now, we could have a rational conversation, or I guess we could just have a war on Twitter. Thanks for listening to Straight Talk with Yuripzy Morgan. We got some exciting stuff coming up, so make sure that you subscribe on our YouTube channel and invite your friends and family to do so too. You can also find us on iTunes and Spotify.